Amma could feel something changing long before anyone said a word. She noticed it in small ways at first, how Leko no longer waited for her after work, how he laughed a little too loudly at jokes other people made, how his eyes seemed to wander when she spoke. He had once been warm, steady, and always ready to listen, but now he acted as if he carried secrets in his pockets. Amma was not the type to jump to conclusions, so she watched quietly, telling herself that maybe he was tired or stressed. But deep inside, she knew the truth was walking toward her, slow and steady. The town they lived in was full of voices, and voices carried fast. At the market, at the bus stop, even outside her small office, people whispered about Leko. Some whispered softly, some whispered with excitement, and some lowered their voices when she walked past, as if the words themselves were too heavy to be heard by her. Amma never stopped to ask what they meant. She only listened. Listening was something she had always been good at. And soon the whispers came together like pieces of a small but painful puzzle. They said Leko planned to break up with her in a big way. Not quietly. Not kindly. But in a dramatic scene he had already talked about with his friends. Amma heard that he wanted to look strong, look brave, look like the one who had made the smartest choice. He had even practiced what he was going to say. Amma did not know if the rumors were true, but the people who spoke them seemed confident. They said they heard it from friends of his, who heard it from him directly. Amma did not cry when she heard this. Instead, she felt a pull in her chest, something between sadness and disappointment, something soft but sharp. She went home that evening and sat outside her small house. Children played in the dusty road, shouting with joy. A mother called her son to wash up. A neighbor laughed loudly at something on her radio. The world moved as usual, but Amma felt distant from it, as if she were sitting behind a thin glass wall. She held her hands in her lap and breathed slowly, trying to settle her thoughts. She wondered why Leko felt the need to perform his feelings. Why he needed an audience. Why he needed to turn pain into a show. But Amma knew one thing about herself. She would not fight for a place in someone's life if that person no longer wanted her there. Her dignity mattered more than anything. She believed in calm strength, not loud battles. So she waited. Not for him, but for her own heart to settle. That night, she made herself a cup of warm tea and sat by her small desk. She looked at the blank paper in front of her. She did not know what she wanted to write at first, but the words came slowly, like footsteps approaching from far away. She wrote simply and clearly. She wrote honestly and softly. She wrote with the kind of peace that comes only when a person knows exactly who they are. The next day, life continued as usual. Amma walked to work, greeted people politely, and carried out her tasks gently and carefully. But she noticed how some people watched her with a mix of pity and curiosity. She did not blame them. Rumors were like wind in the town, they touched everything. Some of her co-workers wanted to ask questions, but none of them did. Amma's quiet expression, the calm way she moved, the steady way she held herself, all told them that she was not in need of gossip or sympathy. Later that afternoon, as she walked past a group of young men sitting under a tree playing drafts, she heard Leko's name mentioned. One of them laughed and mimicked a speech. And though they did not see her, she heard enough to know the rumors were not only true, they had grown legs and traveled far. For a moment she felt a sting in her chest. Not anger. Not heartbreak. Just a small ache for the person she thought Leko was. But still she did not react. She did not stop walking. She did not let the weight of their laughter hold her down. Amma believed that a person's actions always return to them in time, like a bird flying in a wide circle. She believed that calm spirits were stronger than loud ones. She believed that self-respect was something no one could take unless she handed it over willingly. That evening she took out the envelope she had prepared the night before. It was small and simple, just like her message inside it. She held it in her hands and felt a strange sense of calm. The envelope felt light, but she knew the moment she would hand it over, everything would change. Not with noise, not with shouting, not with dramatic scenes, but with quiet truth. Amma then placed the envelope in her bag. She spent the rest of the night cleaning her house, folding her clothes, watering her plants, and preparing a meal for herself. She hummed a small tune while she cooked, one she remembered from her childhood. It reminded her of simpler days, days when life felt straightforward and full of color. She ate slowly, savoring the taste, and reminded herself that life would always move forward. She only had to choose how she wanted to move with it. Before going to bed, she looked at herself in the small mirror by her window. She saw a woman who was steady, gentle, and strong. She saw someone who refused to let someone else's choices shake her foundation. She saw someone who knew her worth. And so she made a quiet promise to herself. She would not let Leko's choices turn her into someone bitter. She would not let humiliation touch her spirit. Whatever came next, she would face it with grace. Whatever speech he had prepared, she would not let it steal her peace. The envelope sat in her bag, silent but ready. The night passed slowly, but Amma slept peacefully, knowing she had made the right choice. The whispers might continue, the rumors might grow louder, but her heart felt calm. And in that calm she found her strength. She did not know exactly what the next day would bring, but she was ready. She had chosen herself. She had chosen dignity. She had chosen quiet courage. The sunset that evening faded gently across the sky, wrapping the town in soft gold. And Amma, standing by her window, watched it with steady eyes, knowing her story was already moving toward a moment that would change everything. Leko sat in the small, crowded corner of his favorite cafe with 3 of his closest friends. The evening air was warm and filled with the sounds of people chatting, children laughing, and the occasional hum of a motorbike passing by. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, voice low but excited, and began reciting the speech he had been practicing all week. His friends listened, nodding and smiling at all the right moments, as though they were the audience he had dreamed of. Leko imagined them clapping and whispering about how brave and decisive he was. In his mind, the applause was loud and perfect. "I need to tell her tonight," he said, his eyes sparkling. "I want everyone to see that I'm strong, that I made the choice, and that she will understand what she lost." His friends chuckled and encouraged him, repeating lines, giving suggestions, and laughing at the dramatic pauses he practiced. Leko didn't see anything wrong with it. He thought he was being clever, confident, and in control. He pictured Amma's shocked expression and the quiet respect everyone around them would have for him. Meanwhile, Amma had already heard some of the whispers about his plan. People had not meant to be cruel, but their gossip had reached her ears, and she had listened with quiet attention. Instead of panicking or crying, she had thought carefully about what she wanted to do. She realized she didn't need to be embarrassed, didn't need to be hurt, and didn't need to participate in Leko's performance. There was a small power in being prepared, and she decided to embrace it. She took out a plain, simple envelope from her drawer and placed it carefully in her bag. The envelope held her message, short but complete, ready to end things on her own terms. Back at the cafe, Leko practiced a few more lines. "Amma, I have thought about this for a long time. You will understand that I am doing this for both our sakes. I hope you see that I am strong." He said the words again and again, adjusting his tone, trying to make it sound both emotional and impressive. He paused for effect, smiled at his friends and imagined Amma's reaction. He was so caught up in himself that he didn't even notice the waiter dropping a plate nearby or the sound of laughter from another table. All he cared about was the moment when he would deliver the speech and feel the satisfaction of having every eye on him. Amma, on the other hand, spent the evening differently. She walked slowly through the streets, letting the sounds of the town sink in. She could hear laughter, the distant noise of drums from a wedding somewhere, and the soft rustle of the trees in the warm wind. She thought about Leko's plans, about the people who shared their gossip with her, and about what she truly wanted. She realized that responding with anger or tears would only give him power he didn't deserve. The envelope she held was small, but it carried her truth, her decision, and her dignity. That was the power she needed, not a loud speech or an audience of friends. She remembered the times she and Leko had laughed together, the walks under the mango trees, and the quiet evenings they had shared. None of those memories were ruined by his plan. They existed still, safe in her mind. She allowed herself a small smile as she walked past the marketplace, greeting the vendors with a soft "good evening," and listening to their replies. Life moved on with or without Leko's dramatics, and she knew she would move forward as well. The next day, Leko continued practicing. He tried variations of his speech, adding pauses here and emotional emphasis there. He wanted it to be perfect, imagining the whispers, the gasps, and even the possible tears. He was convinced that Amma would be shocked, perhaps angry, and that everyone around would admire his courage. He didn't understand that Amma had already planned her response. It was quiet, simple, and final. The envelope would speak for her in a way he could not anticipate. Amma spent her day arranging her thoughts, preparing herself mentally. She knew the moment of confrontation would come, but she would not rush. She thought about the words she wanted to write in the envelope, short, clear, and honest. There would be no insults, no anger, no bitterness. She only wanted peace for herself and to close the chapter with dignity. The thought of Leko's performance no longer frightened her. If anything, it made her feel more resolved. She went about her work as usual, meeting people in the neighborhood, helping with small tasks, and carrying out her responsibilities quietly. She noticed Leko's friends at the market, laughing and speaking in low voices, clearly rehearsing their reactions to the upcoming drama. Amma observed them with calm eyes. Their laughter did not disturb her, their whispers did not hurt her. She knew her moment would come, and when it did, it would be her truth, simple and unshakable. By evening, she sat by her small wooden table at home, looking at the envelope one more time. The paper inside was folded neatly. Her words were clear, her tone steady. It was short, almost too short to seem serious, but that was exactly the point. It carried no theatrics, no grandeur, just honesty. She knew Leko expected a spectacle, but she had chosen something far stronger: peace, clarity, and respect for herself. The night passed slowly. Amma prepared her modest dinner, humming a soft tune she remembered from childhood. She reflected on the lessons she had learned, about patience, self-respect, and the quiet power of knowing one's worth. Leko's rehearsals, his imagined applause, and his friends' encouragement mattered little in her world. She was ready. The envelope was ready. The next day would bring the moment, but she would meet it without fear, without anger, and without loss of dignity. Leko remained unaware of how much Amma already knew, how calmly she had prepared, and how quietly powerful she was. He thought the night's practice had put him in control. Little did he know, the real power was already in Amma's hands. She had not needed an audience, a dramatic speech, or applause. Her strength was in patience, clarity, and quiet preparation. And in that, she felt a deep, steady calm unlike anything Leko could imagine. The cafe was alive with energy that evening, filled with the smell of grilled meat, the chatter of neighbors, and the distant sound of a drum from a wedding a few streets away. Children ran between tables, laughing and chasing one another, while older men sat in the corners playing checkers and discussing the latest news from town. Leko had chosen this spot carefully. He believed it was public enough to make an impression but small enough that he could feel everyone's attention on him when the moment came. He sat at a wooden table near the center, adjusting his shirt nervously, checking the way he looked in the reflection of the window. He imagined how Amma would react, picturing her eyes widening, her lips parting in shock, and the whispers that would follow. His rehearsed speech ran through his mind again and again. He practiced raising his voice slightly, lowering it for dramatic effect, and pausing at all the right moments. Leko wanted this moment to be remembered. He wanted it to feel like a performance, one where he controlled every reaction, every sigh, every glance from the crowd. His friends sat nearby, nodding and giving him subtle signs of encouragement, their smiles reinforcing his belief that he was about to command the scene perfectly. Amma arrived quietly, stepping into the warm evening air with the rhythm of the town around her. She could hear music from a nearby stall, the laughter of people eating and talking, and the occasional call of a street vendor selling bread. Her steps were steady, deliberate, and calm. In her hand she held the small envelope. It was plain and unassuming, but inside, it contained her truth and her decision, neatly folded and ready to speak when words were needed. She moved through the crowd with purpose, nodding politely to familiar faces, her eyes forward, unshaken by the curious glances directed her way. When she reached the table where Leko sat, he straightened his back and cleared his throat. He thought the moment was perfect, that he had created the stage for his dramatic lines. But Amma did not flinch. She did not need to react immediately. She stood quietly, her expression unreadable, her hand resting lightly on the envelope in her bag. Leko felt a small flicker of unease but quickly pushed it aside. He assumed she had no idea what he was planning. He assumed the surprise and shock would be his gift to the crowd and his own satisfaction. Around them, the cafe continued its lively rhythm. A waiter brought plates to a nearby table, the clatter of dishes mixing with laughter and conversation. Children dashed past, squealing with joy, their voices echoing off the walls. Leko tried to block out the surrounding noise, focusing on Amma, imagining the gasps, the whispers, and the shock. He rehearsed his opening lines silently, his lips moving, his hands gesturing slightly as if she could already see the performance. Amma placed her bag gently on the chair next to her and adjusted her posture. She did not speak. She did not announce her arrival. She let the sounds of the cafe wash over her, letting the music, the laughter, and the voices remind her that life continued, no matter Leko's plan. She had prepared herself mentally for this encounter, and she felt no fear. She understood the value of calm and the power of quiet confidence. The envelope was not just paper, it was the statement of her choices, a simple tool that would make everything clear without a word spoken until necessary. Leko began, his voice firm but controlled. Amma, we need to talk. I have thought about this for a long time. His words were meant to carry weight, meant to impress, meant to startle. He paused and looked around, imagining the attention of the small crowd. But Amma remained steady. She did not respond with shock, anger, or tears. She simply waited, calm and poised, letting him speak without interruption. Her silence carried more strength than any speech he could deliver. As Leko continued, growing more dramatic with each line, Amma's mind was focused, her thoughts clear. She knew that his performance was only important to him. She knew that her truth was more powerful than any audience, more enduring than any act. The envelope in her bag was her instrument of finality, quiet and precise. She did not need to match his theatrics. She only needed to wait for the right moment, and that moment would come with clarity and dignity. People in the cafe noticed the tension but could not understand it fully. Some whispered among themselves, wondering why the young woman remained calm while the young man spoke with such emotion. Children paused in their games for a moment, sensing the adult's quiet energy. The music played on, the laughter continued, but a small bubble of stillness surrounded Amma and Leko. Leko, oblivious to how quiet power worked, believed he was commanding the moment. He did not see that Amma's calm presence already shifted the weight in the room. The sun had dipped lower, casting long shadows across the wooden tables and colorful chairs. Amma's hand rested on the envelope as she watched Leko's gestures, his eyes occasionally meeting hers with a flicker of anticipation. She could feel the excitement building in him, but she did not feel anxiety or anger. She only felt readiness. The envelope would speak when needed, and until then she held her composure like a shield, unshaken by the performance or the imagined audience. As Leko's speech reached another dramatic pause, Amma smiled slightly to herself, a small curve of lips that went unnoticed by anyone else. She knew the moment was coming soon. All of his rehearsals, all his dramatic gestures, and all the imagined applause meant nothing when faced with real quiet strength. She waited patiently, the envelope still in her hand, knowing that what she had prepared would leave a mark far stronger than anything Leko could create with words. As Leko began his dramatic speech, Amma reached into her bag and gently placed the small envelope on the table in front of him. The motion was quiet, almost unnoticeable, but it carried a weight far heavier than any words he had rehearsed. Leko's eyes flicked down at it, confusion and curiosity mixing on his face. He had expected a shocked expression, maybe tears or an argument, anything that would give him the reaction he craved. Instead, there was only calm, a calm that made his carefully constructed speech falter before it even began. He picked up the envelope hesitantly, fingers trembling slightly. His friends watched with curiosity, whispering to one another, sensing that something was happening that they hadn't planned for. Amma's hand rested lightly on the back of her chair. Her posture was straight, her eyes steady, her breathing slow and controlled. She didn't need to speak. The envelope itself was a statement. The quietness of her actions created a strange tension in the cafe, a pause in the usual sounds of conversation and laughter. People nearby began to notice the shift in energy, glancing at the young couple, sensing that the moment was significant. Leko slowly opened the envelope, pulling out a neatly folded piece of paper. His eyes scanned the words, and with each line he read, his rehearsed confidence began to crumble. Amma had written carefully, simply, and directly. The letter stated that she had already ended their relationship days earlier. There were no harsh words, no blame and no anger. She had thanked him for the good times they shared and expressed hope that they could both move forward peacefully. Every word was measured, calm and final. It was the opposite of his dramatic speech, yet far more powerful. Leko's mouth opened, then closed as he tried to find a response. His rehearsed lines, the pauses he had planned, the dramatic gestures he had imagined, all vanished into thin air. The envelope had removed the stage, the audience, and the performance. All that remained was truth, simple and unshakable. His friends leaned forward, whispering to one another, astonished at what they were witnessing. Leko had been preparing for a show, and instead he found himself facing a quiet, resolute power that he could not control. Amma remained silent, but her calm presence was louder than any words he could have spoken. She did not rise, she did not shout, she did not argue. She simply let the letter speak for her. The people around the cafe felt it too. Even the children paused briefly in their games, sensing the weight of the moment. Leko's dramatic plan had turned into nothing more than a memory of rehearsed lines. The envelope had rewritten the scene entirely, without a single shout or tear. For a long moment, Leko simply stared at the paper. The words seemed to hold him in place, making him see his actions and intentions from a new perspective. The pride he had counted on to make him feel strong now felt hollow. He realized that the power he had imagined was never his to claim. Amma had already taken control of the story by choosing clarity, peace, and self-respect. Every word she had written reminded him of what mattered: honesty, dignity, and the courage to act without need for approval. People in the cafe began to murmur softly. Some whispered to their companions, commenting on the unexpected turn of events. The vendor at the corner paused mid-motion, looking curiously at the young woman whose quiet confidence had taken over the room. Leko's friends shifted uncomfortably in their seats, no longer sure how to act. The dramatic performance they had encouraged was gone, replaced by something far simpler yet infinitely stronger. The silence that followed Amma's gesture felt like a lesson to everyone present. Leko tried to speak, his voice low and uncertain. I didn't know." He could not finish the thought. Amma simply nodded once, a small, graceful acknowledgement, and reached for her bag. She picked up the envelope calmly, her expression unreadable, her dignity intact. The sound of her movement filled the space where his speech had been, replacing it with quiet finality. She stood straight-backed and poised, leaving no room for further debate. The cafe slowly returned to its usual rhythm, though the echoes of the moment lingered. People returned to their meals, their laughter, and their music, but many carried with them the memory of the young woman who had turned what could have been humiliation into calm strength. Amma walked toward the exit, her steps steady, not looking back. She felt a sense of lightness, a sense that she had reclaimed control over her story. The envelope had done its work. Outside, the warm evening air greeted her. Children still played, neighbors continued their conversations, and the smell of food drifted from nearby stalls. Amma breathed in deeply, feeling the quiet peace that comes from making the right choice. The world continued, vibrant and alive, but she had taken a moment that belonged entirely to her, a moment of clarity and power that required no applause or audience. Leko sat for a while longer, holding the paper in his hands, reading and rereading the words. The pride he had relied on faded into reflection. He thought about the speeches he had practiced, the gestures he had planned, and the imagined reactions he had counted on. All of it seemed insignificant compared to the calm strength Amma had displayed. He realized that sometimes the most powerful acts are not loud, not dramatic, but quiet, measured, and deliberate. As Amma walked down the street, the envelope safely in her bag, she allowed herself a small smile. She had acted with grace, closed the chapter on her own terms, and remained true to herself. She did not need to prove anything, and she did not need to humiliate anyone in return. The evening sky was painted in soft orange and pink, and she felt a sense of freedom she had not felt before. Life had shifted subtly but completely in her favor. By the time she reached her small home, the stars were beginning to appear, shining softly over the town. Amma placed the envelope on her table as a reminder of the moment she had claimed her peace. She sat quietly, sipping water, thinking about how important it was to face challenges with dignity. Leko's performance had failed, but she had succeeded, not through anger or drama, but through calm, measured action and clear honesty. The envelope, small and simple, had become a symbol of her strength. It had reminded her that no one else controls her story. She could end things without chaos, without spectacle, and still remain unshaken. The lesson was hers alone, quiet but unforgettable. Amma stepped out of the cafe into the warm evening air, feeling a lightness she had not known in weeks. The small envelope she had handed to Leko rested quietly in her bag, but its presence was more than physical. It carried the closure, clarity, and calm she had longed for. Each step she took felt deliberate, measured, and free. She was no longer weighed down by fear, uncertainty, or the anticipation of humiliation. The streets of the town were busy, with children running and laughing, neighbors chatting, and the faint smell of grilled food filling the air, yet Amma moved through it all with a sense of purpose and serenity that drew quiet admiration from those she passed. As she walked, people noticed her calm and steady pace. Some had seen the exchange at the cafe and whispered softly to one another, commenting on the remarkable composure she had shown. Others, who had only caught glimpses of her quiet demeanor, felt drawn to her confidence and self-possession. Amma did not seek admiration. She did not even notice the glances of respect or the silent nods from strangers. Her strength came from within, from the knowledge that she had acted with dignity, honesty, and self-respect. It was a strength that required no applause, no audience, and no validation, yet it radiated naturally, like sunlight spilling quietly across the town. Meanwhile, Leko sat at the table inside the cafe, staring down at the small envelope and the words Amma had written. The realization of what had happened slowly sank in. His rehearsed speech, the careful gestures, and the imagined admiration of everyone present had collapsed completely. He felt a mix of embarrassment, disappointment, and, above all, reflection. For the first time he understood the weight of pride when it is misplaced. He had believed that performance, drama, and control could command respect or attention, but he had underestimated quiet courage, thoughtfulness, and dignity. The calm strength that Amma displayed was a mirror he could not look away from, showing him the cost of arrogance and the emptiness of spectacle when it replaces truth. Amma continued her walk through the streets, feeling the soft wind against her face. She remembered the small things in her life that gave her joy, the smell of freshly baked bread at the market, the laughter of children playing under the fading sun, the familiar greeting of her neighbors as she passed. Life moved on, vibrant and unhurried, and she had chosen to move with it, embracing peace rather than chaos. Each step reminded her that she had the power to shape her story, to end chapters on her own terms, and to enter new beginnings with clarity and grace. Her confidence grew not from the fall of another, but from the quiet realization that she had chosen herself, her peace, and her dignity above all else. When she reached her small home, she paused at the doorway, letting the golden light of the sunset spill across her face. The day had been heavy for others perhaps, but for her, it was freeing. She placed her bag down, carefully removing the envelope and putting it on her table as a reminder of her quiet victory. Sitting at her small desk, she reflected on what had happened. She had not reacted with anger, nor had she sought to humiliate Leko in return. Instead, she had acted with clarity and calm, showing that strength often comes without noise, and power does not require drama. In that reflection she felt proud, not because others would see it but because she knew the truth of her actions. The evening grew darker, but Amma remained calm and reflective. She took a small walk through the neighborhood, greeting familiar faces and sharing brief smiles. Each interaction reminded her that life was full of small, meaningful moments and that happiness often came from choices rather than circumstances. Leko's actions, the whispers, and the tension had once threatened to disturb her peace, but now they existed only as lessons. She carried forward the knowledge that she had met the challenge with wisdom and calm, and in doing so she had set a standard for herself that no one could take away. At the same time, inside the cafe, Leko could not stop thinking about Amma's calm demeanor and the simplicity with which she had delivered her truth. He recalled every dramatic gesture he had planned, every line he had practiced, and every imagined reaction of the audience. Each one felt hollow now, replaced by the quiet, undeniable strength of her action. He realized that pride without thought, drama without consideration, and performance without substance could never match the quiet power of honesty and self-respect. For the first time he felt the weight of reflection, a thoughtfulness that would stay with him for weeks to come. Amma's days that followed were filled with small joys and renewed focus. She worked with her neighbors, helped at the market, and spent quiet evenings in her home, enjoying the peace she had chosen. She reflected on the past but without bitterness. She welcomed new beginnings with a calm heart, knowing that every decision she made from that point onward would be guided by her values, not by the expectations or performances of others. The envelope she had placed before Leko remained on her desk for a time, a symbol of courage, clarity, and dignity, reminding her that the quiet path often holds the greatest strength. She understood that life would always have moments of challenge, people who would attempt to impose their drama, and situations that might test her patience. But Amma had discovered a truth that no performance could ever teach. Calmness, honesty, and self-respect are forms of strength that cannot be taken away. She had faced one such challenge and emerged with her dignity intact, her heart unshaken and her mind clear. It was a lesson she carried forward, quietly but confidently, in every choice she made. Even in the town, the story of that evening slowly spread. People spoke softly of the young woman who had met humiliation with grace, whose quiet action had silenced drama and commanded respect without a word. Children told their parents about the woman who was calm and brave, and neighbors repeated her name with admiration in hushed tones. Amma herself paid little attention to the whispers. She did not need recognition. She only needed to know that she had acted with integrity and strength, and that knowledge gave her a sense of freedom and lightness unlike any applause could provide. Leko, still seated in the cafe, thought long into the evening. He replayed the events in his mind, trying to understand how his plan had failed and how Amma had succeeded with such quiet simplicity. He realized that his pride, once a source of imagined power, had been his greatest weakness. The envelope, small and unassuming, had held a strength he could not match with noise, drama, or audience. He felt the first sting of regret, not for Amma, but for the lessons he had learned too late. Amma finally returned home as the stars began to appear, the town settling into the quiet of night. She placed the envelope on her small wooden table once more, a silent symbol of her choice and her strength. She poured a glass of water, took a slow sip, and sat back in her chair. Peace filled her chest, a deep and steady feeling that would carry her forward. Leko's words, rehearsals, and pride no longer mattered. What mattered was the strength she had shown, the dignity she had preserved, and the life she was ready to live on her own terms. She closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the calm settle over her like a soft blanket. She understood that a new horizon awaited her, one she could meet with confidence, clarity, and grace. Whatever challenges might come, whatever dramas might appear, she was ready. She had learned the power of quiet courage, and it would guide her in every step she took from that evening onward.